Hi, I'm Cliff, and this is my garage, and it's time for the first upgrade on the new Cayman. Hey, welcome back to the garage, and if this is your first time joining me, thanks for dropping by. So I've owned my new 2012 Porsche Cayman S for a couple of weeks now, and I've been itching to start upgrading it and working on it. The first thing I wanted to try out was to replace the stock exhaust system with something more free-flowing and better sounding and, maybe a little bit louder. I did a lot of looking. Now, on my old Cayman, I have a Borla exhaust that I absolutely love. Love the sound of it. I love the just the look of it on the back of the car. It's a great exhaust system. Unfortunately, Borla no longer supports the 987 series of Caymans, so I had to start looking at other brands, and I gave serious consideration to both Soul Performance and Fab Speed because I really like the idea of a valved exhaust where you can open up or close down the muffler system so that it becomes more free flowing but louder, and then you can quiet it down by making it less free flowing by just flipping a switch. Unfortunately, the more I looked at it, I just really had a hard time justifying $2,500 for an exhaust system. So I kept on looking and I investigated some lower priced options that really struck me as, well, cheap, and I really didn't have confidence in the type of sound they would produce. And I looked at a couple others, including Top Speed, I think. Top Speed? Not sure. I'll look it up and put it here on the screen. I was also very interested in this outfit, and they're from the UK. But I finally settled on something that's a little unusual, and that's Carnival. Carnival. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I asked them, and I really didn't get a real clear explanation of how you're supposed to pronounce this. He did say it was like car, new, all new car backwards. So Carnewal, I guess, is the best way to describe it. The owner of the company, Gert Carnewal, and again, I'm not sure about the Gert. I'm not. Maybe it's Gert. I'm not sure. This company is located in the Netherlands, and what they do is really kind of interesting. They take a stock Porsche exhaust and then they modify it to make it more free flowing and better sounding. The way this works is they send you a modified exhaust. You install it on your car, and then you take your old exhaust, unmodified, and you ship it back to them. So that it's kind of like a core charge process, like when you buy a battery from an auto store, you pay money for a core charge. You take the battery, you bring back your old battery, and you get your core charge refunded. Works the same way with Carnival. They charge you the cost of the exhaust or the conversion process and then ship you, and they also charge you a separate core charge. Then when you ship them back your unmodified exhaust, they refund your core charge back to you, in my case, back to my credit card. Now, since they're not actually producing an exhaust system, just modifying an existing one, the price is really quite low compared to the cost of purchasing one like from FabSpeed or Soul Performance Parts. In my case, since the shipping had to be all the way to the United States and then back to the Netherlands, the price was a little over $800. If you're located in Europe or someplace closer to the Netherlands, of course, your costs are going to be quite a bit lower, maybe as much as $150 less. If you're in the United States, like I am, you may be concerned about, well, how long is this shipping process going to take? I'm going to place the order for my exhaust system. I don't want to wait for weeks and weeks, maybe months for it to make it through customs and arrive here in the United States. Well, don't worry about that. I placed the order for my Carnival system on Friday morning at about 10 o'clock. It was on my front porch at about 2 o'clock Monday afternoon. So the shipping time is very, very short. Nothing to be concerned about. In fact, I think if I had ordered it from someplace like Fab Speed or Seoul, I don't know that. In fact, I know they would not have been able to get it to me any quicker than that. So shipping time, not a concern. Once you receive your modified exhaust, you have 2 weeks to remove your old one and ship it back to Carnival and get your core charge back. Let me also add that I found Gert to be very kind and generous and very, very patient in answering the barrage of questions that I sent him over email before buying the exhaust. Now, while I've got this exhaust all pulled apart, I'm going to go ahead and also swap out the T pipe and the old tips for a new X pipe and new tips from Soul Performance. So I've got the exhaust still in the box over here on the work table. Let's go check that out. The X pipe and tips from Soul are going to be here tomorrow afternoon. Okay, let's dig in here. Oh, must be, yeah, these are taped on the other side. There we go. Okay, so you can see that these are obviously used. These are not brand new. And you can see here where this has been cut open and re-welded. It's nice and cleaned up. Like I said, I don't know exactly what all they do. I don't offhand see anything else I would say looks like a modification. Okay. Do you have, what's this? Couple of, wow, that was loud. Guess those are stickers. Yep, couple of stickers. All right, that's it. Not a whole lot to see. Just being paranoid here and make sure we do have a left and a right. Looks like, let's see here. Yep, we have a left and a right. Looks like we are good to go. So we can start removing the old exhaust. I started this project off a couple of days ago by lifting up the car and going under here and finding every fastener that I thought might need to come loose to do this job and just soaking it with some CRC knocker loose. A silly name for a product, but it works really well. It's an excellent penetrating solvent. Now, do be careful if you're going to use this because this is not WD-40. This is considerably more caustic, and especially if you're spraying up at things and you get this in your eyes, it's not a pleasant experience. So do be careful of that and wear some safety goggles. And in doing that, going down around and soaking down these things. Oh, and I also did that a couple more times during the last couple of days to try and really penetrate and get the stuff loosened up ahead of time. But I also discovered as part of that process that access is really, really tight under here, and that's going to be a challenge. And so I have removed the rear wheels, and I'm also going to take off this little cover plate here because the main flange we need to disconnect to get this muffler system out is right behind all this stuff. So we're going to need a T12 bit to remove this fastener. And then we need to swap over to a 10mm bit. Oh, and if you're in the market for an absolutely wonderful impact driver, cordless impact driver, I love my DeWalt. This is a 20-volt max system. It's just been great. Best cordless impact I've ever used. The only thing that surpasses this is my actual pneumatic impact wrench and my what is that thing? Ingersoll Rand, and that's also a beautiful piece of equipment. So if you're looking for one, I highly recommend this. I'll give you a link to it on Amazon down in the video description. Okay, so we'll do that. Okay, coming off easy enough. Now let's see if we can wiggle this thing out of here. Okay, pretty straightforward. I'll go ahead and put these fasteners back in where they came from. For me, that is the easiest way to keep track of these things. All right, we've got access here. Still going to be kind of challenging, but not quite as bad. I can foresee a lot of extensions and swivel adapters in my future. So swinging the camera around, you can see the actual flange there that we need to get to. There are 3 bolts and nuts holding that on. And, well, like I said, it's going to be challenging to reach these things, but we're going to start right there. So after looking at it for a bit, actually what we've got a stud that's mounted here into this flange. It goes through, and there's a 13mm nut on this side. So we'll just remove these nuts. Oh, that doesn't want to move. Now the question is, am I moving the nut or am I just stripping the bolt? I think I'm just tearing up the bolt. Damn. Or the nut, rather. I was kind of afraid of that. This car lived up north where, you know, road salt and everything is used, and I'm afraid we're going to be stymied with a lot of corrosion. Okay, well, that was fun. I had quite a battle with the nuts on this thing, and ultimately it turned out that, well, they were quite corroded, as I thought they would be, and a little bit rounded off. And so this is an excellent example where you really need both 6-point and 12-point sockets, and for that matter, end wrenches if you can afford it. 12-point sockets gives you that ability to adjust your position very finely, but 6-point sockets do a much better job of actually grabbing onto the flats of the nut rather than the corners. Since the corners were a little bit rounded off, the 12-point socket was just spinning around on this. When I changed over to a 6-point socket, I managed to get hold of it, and it did come off. Now, getting hold of it, though, that was only part of the problem, because one of the nuts came off fine. The other 2, despite my best efforts, I ended up snapping the stud off. Now, this isn't as tragic as it might have otherwise been, since I'm planning to replace these headers anyway in a few weeks. But I really wanted to run these the new Carnewal muffler with the stock headers to check the sound. And well, I'm gonna have to see what I can do about these snapped off studs. I'll either have to like drill them out, or hopefully I can just push them out. They're mounted in the flange, in the header side of the flange. Hopefully I can just knock them out backwards, or if I really have to, I can drill them out and replace all 3 with just some bolts in order to do the testing. Now I should mention that the 3rd nut down on the bottom here, It was badly rusted. I could not get hold of it, even with the 6-point. So I had to resort to something that many of you may not really have ever seen. It's called an extractor socket. This is designed to grab onto a rounded bolt. And I borrowed these from a friend of mine. I've been meaning to get my own set for a while, and I just ordered some off Amazon this morning. And I'll let you know how those work out. These work well, but I can't recommend them because they are so tall. It gets really hard to get them into tight places, and this is the epitome of a tight place. So these are Huskies from Home Depot, and they work great, except they feel that they're just like super tall, and that's a limitation on them. So I can't really recommend them. I'm going to check out the ones that I'm getting from Amazon, and I'll let you know how that goes. Just kind of a spoiler, you guys may have noticed this chemical guy's ultra bright light back in here. Let me just say, in case you noticed it, this thing sucks. Don't buy this. It appears that, well, there's this bracer that mounts to the car. I don't think this has to be removed. It looks like this mounting bracket hooks or bolts onto this brace, and this entire bracket clamps onto the muffler. So rather than trying to loosen it and take it off and get the muffler out of it, or get the exhaust pipe out of it, I think it's gonna be far easier to remove the exhaust, just unbolt it here, remove the bracket with the exhaust, and transfer it over to the new exhaust before putting it back in. 13mm socket and wrench. A little bit of a tight fit here for the wrench, but what's new? It's kind of a flange on the back here that, once again, makes it really hard to get a wrench onto the nut. Okay. That's loose. All right, there's some good progress. I've watched several videos and looked at a couple other things on removing the Cayman exhaust, and one thing they all do is they remove the entire exhaust at one time. It just seems to me it would be a whole lot easier to break loose and break loose the connections here at the T-pipe, swing it down, break loose the connections at the top of that other connecting pipe that's up in here, and remove one side, remove the left side, then remove the T-pipe and finish breaking loose the upper pipe connectors, and then take the other side out. That's what I'm going to try and do. This could be a horrible mistake, but we'll see. So I went and grabbed my Ingersoll Rand 2235 titanium impact wrench. I bought this a few years ago. It has been a fantastic tool. Link in the description below. I'm going to start off by actually trying to tighten this a bit, just trying to work it back and forth to break it loose. Okay. A little bit too far. Put this back together. And despite this being part of Ingersoll Rand's supposed quiet series, don't use it without hearing protection. It's still pretty doggone loud. Okay. Tighten it up a bit. Kind of work it back and forth a bit. There we go. That is actually loose enough. I can actually pull this down. And I can access these two, wow, very corroded bolts up here at the top. I had to switch sockets here since these are going back to 13mm nuts. Same thing, I'm going to tighten them a bit, loosen, tighten, loosen before trying to take them off. Oh, that's okay. Yep.
Boy, I'm having trouble getting the socket onto the nut. That's weird. It's almost as if that's a different size. No, I think it's just rusty.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Okay. I
think we're ready to try and take that left side out.
Before we can really accomplish much of anything, I've got to get this clamp loose. Soaked it down with some more knocker loose. We'll let it sit for a while and see what we can do with it. Let it sit for about 10 minutes, came back and just started tapping on it with the hammer, and it started coming right loose. Let's try squirting some knocker loose up there into this joint. Just using this paper towel to keep it from dripping everywhere all over the floor. Been about 5 minutes. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Goodness. Look at that. Just broke it loose entirely. I should have done it up here also. Oh, crap. I ignored my own advice. I forgot to put on safety glasses, and now it's in my eyes. Ow. Okay. Let's see if we can get this loose. Now, of course, I've got to return this to Carnival, so I can't really beat the crap out of this too bad getting it out of here. Okay, so I cut loose these bolts up here, and then it was still hanging on the studs from the exhaust manifold on that side. So when I wiggled that loose, this whole thing just came loose and laid down like this. And so it's possible that really the best way is to loosen up everything and take this out in one piece. Now the question is, can I pick this thing up and get it off of here and set it down on the floor by myself? Let's see. I really don't know how heavy. Oh, this isn't bad. There it is, all out on the floor, ready to take apart and send back to Gert. I got so wrapped up in trying to solve the problem of the busted off studs that I forgot to record it. But what I did is, and this is one of the studs here. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's got a serrated barrel on it so that it press fits up into the sheet metal to keep it from spinning. So you couldn't just twist it out. So what I did was I took an old punch that I had, and it was a sharp pointed punch, and I just ground it off in a big, nice, flat area. And I put it on the busted off end of the stud and just walloped it with a ball peen hammer 4 or 5 times, and it drove it back out. No damage to the flange. It looks perfect. So that's a big relief. Now I can just replace that with a bolt, and I can get around to installing the new system. And then in a few weeks, when the new headers arrive, they'll either have their own studs or they'll have bolts or whatever it's going to be, but I can get rid of these temporary bolts. Eventually, I plan to fill these diffuser openings with a silver mesh, and I don't think it would look good with these golden colored parts behind it, so I decided to paint the new exhaust. I started out by cleaning them with a pressure washer, followed up with Meguiar's Ultimate Wheel Cleaner to remove any road tar, brake dust, etc. You can see it turning purple as it dissolves bits of iron dust stuck to the surface. I let it set for a few minutes and then gave them a good scrubbing and a thorough rinse. I followed this up by spraying them down with some Osmo surface prep to take care of any rust. It also has the side effect of doing an even deeper clean. If you need a great converter to prep rusty parts for painting, I'll give you a link for Osmo down below. After the Osmo had worked its magic, I did another rinse down and carefully blew them dry with a leaf blower. The exhaust pipes seemed to be plated and polished, maybe for like heat control, so I masked them off and I left them unpainted. For the paint, I used Rust-Oleum High Heat.
Most high temperature paints are meant for barbecues, and they're only good up to 1200 degrees. Some even say 1200, but if you look in the fine print, they tell you, well, only 600 degrees constant and 1200 intermittent. The Rust-Oleum paint is specifically designed for engine parts, and it's good for a full 2000 degrees. If you're going to paint exhaust parts, I highly recommend this stuff. I'll give you a link to this also down in the video description below. A couple coats later, the exhausts are looking pretty good. Now that we've got the exhaust cleaned up and painted the way I want, we can look at starting to put this back together. Now this is the original T-pipe, which is a bit of a misnomer now. On the older models, this was actually a T. There was a single pipe coming off of here. This is more like a pie pipe. I mean, you know, the mathematical symbol, not the delicious pastry treat. I'm not sure if I'm going to need these clamps off of here or not, because I'm not sure what the Soul X pipe looks like. But speaking of the Soul X pipe, we've got it. So let's get that out of the box. These are the actual tips. And there is the X pipe underneath there. Oh, okay, it has its own clamps. That's good, so I don't have to worry about cleaning up that old hardware. That really looks nice. Oh yeah, look at that. Those are gonna look sharp. I think I'm gonna leave this silver. I'm not gonna bother trying to paint that, because that's not really the point of why these were painted black. Yeah, those look really nice. I'm very happy with those. And so let's set that kind of aside, and let's start putting this whole thing together. One thing about these Soul X pipes is that this goes on here, and you do have some play, so you can adjust the position of the tip in and out by, I think, about 3/4 of an inch. 3/4 of an inch. So if you want them poking out a bit, or if you want them recessed, or well, not really recessed, but flush with the surround around the exhaust, you know, it's just your personal taste. You can adjust it. I like that. I started getting ready to put all this back together and looking at this split coupling and clamps, and I realized that while the coupling and the clamps were in fine shape, the bolts were terrible. They were very rusted up, kind of decayed. The heads of the bolts were in really bad shape, as well as the corners of the nuts. So I couldn't get an exact match, but I did run down to the hardware store and got some stainless steel replacements. So that should take care of that problem. Same thing with these band clamps. The clamps themselves are in great shape, but this bolt was not. And so I found the correct size in stainless steel and replaced it. And again, that should last forever now. In putting all this back together, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put everything on loosely, and that will give me wiggle room to kind of get everything adjusted properly when I get it back onto the car. So I'm going to start with the band clamp. And looking back at my notes that I made when I started taking this apart, okay, I was saying that this bolt was going straight up, and then this piece here, the ear, the rounded ear, was going upward. And based on the way this kind of fits together, it looks like it goes about right there, which makes sense with this being right at the 90-degree point, is what I was saying, right at this seam. So let's take and let's see that ear up like this. Let's see, is that right? No, that belongs to this side. I think that, yes, okay, this one belongs on that side. Let's get this one instead.
can't help but scrape up my brand new paint job a little bit, but that, again, the whole point of this was not to really look pretty, it's to keep it dark inside those new grills that I'm going to put in. Okay, and there. I think then we'll take this clamp, went like this, and let's see here. Went on like this with the nuts facing down this way so you can get to them. Then we'll take our new X pipe. We probably need to loosen this up, I'm guessing. No, it fits right on there. There. Back off on these clamps a bit. Just guesstimating, get them in the middle. Tighten down these a bit. Actually, you know, probably I don't even need to tighten that because these are holding it together. I'll give us a bit more of a bump. Tighten them up a little more. Make sure we stay together. There. Okay, that's nice and tight. Is that it? I thought there was more to it. Looks like we're ready to put it back on the car. One thing I wanted to mention is that there's a definite shape to the exhaust. It comes down and then it flattens out. So you want to make sure that you set up the X pipes here, or you install the X pipes so that they come down and then flatten. If you don't want to turn them upside down, because then they'd come straight out and then point down into the ground, and that would look stupid. Okay, something tells me this is going to go in much more difficultly than it came out. That is a one-person job. Okay, that wasn't so bad. And yes, it's gonna again kind of jam and hang there. Got to get it all the way up in there and get it back onto the studs, the exhaust manifold studs. Oh, look at that. Okay, once it catches that manifold stud, it kind of jams on it, hangs there. Having trouble getting the other one. There we go. And those are on. Yeah, this is officially a pain in the butt. Yep, lining this up is proving to be problematic. Definitely find a friend to help you do this. There, finally. Boy, that was not fun. I see that this bracket kind of rotated around and fell out of place. You can also see I've got it too far back. Well, that was the whole point, was you know, knowing that I had to adjust this later. Let me readjust here and get some better light up so I could see up under here, because this lighting is great for illuminating from the camera view, but I'm not getting anything up in here. That lighting is a lot better. I'm gonna need to loosen up this bracket. Whoa. Came off. Man, what a pain. I forgot to put the gaskets in. I got to take this whole thing back out. Oh my God. Actually, by loosening it, I may be able to take off one side at a time and get the gaskets on. Of course, now I'm holding this and the bolt is down there on the ground. Okay, now got to break this side loose and put the gasket on. Okay, we are now roughly reassembled. All right, there's no point in making you watch you put a few bolts back in, so I'll come back when I've got this all buttoned back up. I got the exhaust bolted back in place. As I expected, there was a lot of finagling and adjusting of the position to get all the bolts back in, but it wasn't that difficult, but definitely a two-person job, or having two people would make this a lot easier. Now I got to take and tighten up the clamps on this split coupling up in here. Okay. And then need to rotate the X pipe up into position, and this is going to take some finagling to get it into the center. It actually looks pretty good, but I'm pretty certain, well, let's see, the clamps are down here, so they're accessible. So I need to take and put the tips on in order to really judge exactly what the angle should be. I think it would be better to put these clamps so that the bolt is at the bottom to make it easier to adjust. I've got them adjusted as far back, in as it'll go. And even then they protrude just a bit. So I'm going to put the bolt heads to the outside. I pulled the tips back off and gave them a good cleaning because they had some soot on them and some fingerprints. And like I said, cleaned all that off and put on some nitrile gloves. I'm just kind of concerned about oil and gunk from my hands being on here and then baking into the finish the first time they get really heated up. I don't know if that's a valid concern or not, but I'm kind of in better safe than sorry mode on this one. And so we can install these tips now. I did some finagling with them, and what I found is I like them best when they're pushed all the way on, as far as they'll go. And I wish they would even go in maybe a ½ inch further so they were more flush with the shroud here. I think it would look better, but these by no means look bad. They look really, really good. So let me they are a bit fussy because, they're just kind of free-form positioning. They kind of wiggle around. And maybe when I really tighten down on the clamps, it'll be more aligned, but there isn't a super tight fit onto the cross pipe. And so there's some play in there. It's just this question of probably tightening and adjusting and wiggling and tightening some more to get them exactly the way I want them. Fit the second one on here. Check here, yep, they're pretty much even with each other. I'm gonna swing it up and kind of use the shroud to get them aligned this way with each other. And then I gotta kind of eyeball them being parallel and rotated in the proper position. Okay, let's try that. Let me try tightening them down, and we'll see how that looks. One benefit of pushing them all the way on, as they are definitely hitting like a stopping point at the bend. Maybe I'm not sure, but the point is that they are perfectly aligned with each other in terms of being straight across here. I thought I was gonna have to like a board and finagle with this, but since I wanted them so far anyway, this is working out fine. There's a lot of take up in these clamps. Seem pretty tight, and yet the bolts are not particularly difficult to turn more. I can't imagine I could tighten these too much. Oh, there we go. Now I'm getting quite a bit more resistance. There. Okay. Now they're getting very tight. All right. They appear to have pretty much, yeah, they're still level. They're still even with each other and parallel. So that looks pretty good. Now, finagle where I want to fit them. That looks pretty awesome right there. I'm not sure how well it's coming across in the camera, but these things look really, really nice. Now, the last step is going to be to tighten up the clamps that connect the X pipe to the two resonators. This is pretty easy because since I'm turning, there's no tendency with this bolt to make this thing turn, and so not having to fight something like that. I need to get a deeper socket. These clamps are tightening down, and the bolt is coming out so much that it's not able to grab the bolt, or rather the nut, anymore. I need to grab myself a 15mm deep socket. Well, it turns out the only 15mm deep socket I've got is an impact socket. I don't know where my regular 3/8 drive deep sockets are at. I really need to get an extension for this. It's running my fingers into the all right, that feels nice and tight. There we go, all done. To be honest, these things look even better than I thought they would. One thing that kind of surprised me is that the surface seems a bit delicate. When I push these up against the plastic shroud here to help align them, you can see it appears to have kind of burnished a couple of spots. I'm not sure how well that's coming across on the camera, but it's very apparent in real life. And it's almost like this rough surface got burnished off and polished, and now there's like a shiny spot. Now, maybe it's just it took off a little bit of this, or a little bit of this plastic shroud came off on there and is embedded in the surface. Anyhow, the guys at Soul suggested trying some acetone on it. Well, let me get it in the camera view. Yeah, some acetone, and see if that'll clean it up. And let's just give this a try. I mean, it's not bad. It's just I wish it wasn't there. And that has absolutely no effect on it whatsoever. Okay. That's kind of disappointing. After letting Soul know that the acetone hadn't worked, they sent me a set of new tips. Thanks, guys.
I really appreciate that. Let's see how much difference the Carnival exhaust makes. Oh, and by the way, I locked the sensitivity on the microphone to make sure that any differences in volume got captured properly. First, here's a cold start with the stock Cayman exhaust. And now the Carnival exhaust. Not a huge difference, but the Carnival exhaust is a bit lower in tone, a bit louder, and a little bit throatier sounding. Let's see how they sound when revving the engine. Let's try a drive-by. Again, pretty close. And finally, a pull away. So I think we can safely say that the sound is different and I think it's improved, but it's not a dramatic difference. Now, just as a side note, Gert recommended putting 50 to 100 miles on the car, give the chance to let the ECU do any adapting that it needed to do. And so I put 100 on the car before we did any of this testing. Going beyond just the sound, well, what about the performance? And to do that, I checked the 0 to 60 times using my Draghi performance monitor. I did the testing both before and after on approximately the same kind of day. Both days were nice and clear, dry pavement, and right around 65 degrees. Now, I wanted to keep my my own shifting performance out of the equation, so I put the PDK transmission into full automatic mode and used the Sport Plus feature. I also turned off the air conditioner, and I did not use launch control. With everything stock, I ran a whole series of 0 to 60 runs on several different sections of road, going in both directions on each one, and averaged them all out. And I got a mean time of 4.77 seconds, which really aligns quite nicely with the factory published 4.8 seconds 0 to 60 time. Getting into a little more math, if you're interested, the standard deviation was 0.09, and I used a 90% confidence level to generate a confidence interval of 0.06. So that means we're 90% confident that the true average for a 0 to 60 is within 600ths of a second, or in other words, between 4.7 and 4.82 seconds, which again, the factory spec time of 4.8 is right in there. So it seems that the Draghi is doing a pretty good job of measuring the performance accurately. After installing the Carnival exhaust and putting 100 miles on the car, I redid all those 0 to 60 runs, but a lot more of them. And like I said, the second day was largely identical to the first in terms of weather and the conditions on the road. This time, I got an average 0 to 60 of 4.69, which is 0.08 seconds better than stock. Standard deviation on those was 0.11. And when we get our 90% confidence interval, since I did a lot more tests, we've narrowed the confidence interval down to 0.03. So we're now 90% confident that our real number is between 4.66 and 4.72 seconds. Now, as I said before, I don't have access to a dynamometer. So instead, I built myself a little mathematical model to try and calculate the horsepower based on the 0 to 60 times being fed into some standard acceleration equations that use horsepower, weight, gear ratios, the fact that I'm only going to do one gear shift to get to 60 miles an hour, things like that. And when I used the stock numbers, it gave me a horsepower that aligned really well with the published figure of 320 horsepower. So I think my model's pretty good. And when I feed the new figures after the Carnival exhaust, based strictly on the averages, I get a gain of 6 horsepower from adding the Carnival exhaust. Not a lot, and it works out to $135 a horsepower. But that really makes sense with my subjective feeling, which I could thought I felt a small difference, but I wasn't sure. So 6 horsepower would probably feel like that. When you factor in the confidence intervals, now we're looking at possibly the real answer is as little as -1 horsepower. We lost up 1 horsepower by adding the new exhaust up to a maximum theoretical number of that we gained 15 horsepower. Now, the way that the confidence intervals work, those two results are really, really unlikely. And your true answer is going to be somewhere around 6 horsepower. Now, if I'd gained 15 horsepower, I'm pretty sure subjectively I would have felt it. And I don't think that we gained 15 horsepower. 6 horsepower seems to be a sensible number and is probably right at what we actually got. So the bottom line is the Carnival exhaust worth it? And I have to say the answer is a qualified yes. For a relatively modest price, you're going to get a very modest performance boost, and you're going to get a modest but noticeable and pleasant change in the tone of the exhaust. Now, one question that always comes up is drone. Now, there was no droning that I ever heard being caused by the exhaust. Considering that it's just a slightly modified stock exhaust, that's really not a surprise. Again, is it worth it? That's up to you. Part of it is going to be the factor of your local laws. An extraordinarily or even modestly loud exhaust may get you in trouble, in which case the Carnival exhaust is a nice change, gives you a little bump in performance, probably will not get you in trouble with your local law enforcement. Now, if you're looking for something more dramatic, which is what I really want, this is probably not the exhaust for you. And I foresee sometime in the future, and hopefully in the near future, I'm going to go with a different exhaust system. I really, really like the Borla exhaust that's on the old car. I like that sound, that aggressive note, especially the little pops and crackles you get sometimes on a deceleration. And so I'll be looking for something to give me that effect. If there was some way to do it, I would modify that exhaust and put it on here. I might look into that, but more likely, I'm hoping to find some exhaust manufacturer that's going to work with me and give me a price break, or maybe even just give me a valved exhaust that I can try out. So if you are such a manufacturer, please contact me. Okay, guys, that is it for step one of Project 987.2. We've got the Carnival exhaust on here. Now we're going to move on. There's several of the things that might be next. I might go ahead and do the exhaust headers now, or I may just go jump on the tail lights instead. I'm not sure, but you'll find out very soon. Please go down there, find that thumbs up button, give me a like on this video. It really helps with YouTube's algorithm. If you haven't become a subscriber yet, and you know you want to, go find that big red subscribe button, give it a click. Doesn't cost a penny, helps me out tremendously also with YouTube's algorithm. And finally, if you want to keep up with everything going on with Project 987.2, all the mods that I'm doing, go find that bell icon, give it a click. That turns on notifications for this channel, and that way YouTube will let you know every time that I post something new from here in Cliff's Garage. I'll see you next time.